It started with the smell of smoke. Not the kind you get from a fireplace or someone grilling burgers down the road. This was sharp, wild, thick. I stepped out onto the porch that morning, coffee still steaming in my mug, and saw the horizon behind the ridge glowing orange. The forest was burning. It's strange what panic does to the body. 1 second I was frozen, just watching, and the next I was moving, dragging out the old garden hose, soaking the dry grass around the cabin, loading the truck in case I needed to bolt. I live alone, about 10 miles outside of town, surrounded by trees. That's a blessing most days. That day, it felt like a trap. The fire hadn't reached my land yet, but it was moving fast. The sheriff's department had called earlier, advising everyone on the ridge to be ready to evacuate. I didn't have much, a couple bags, my dog's ashes in a tin, and a few tools I couldn't part with. I'd loaded those into the truck by noon. I kept checking the wind, trying to read the smoke. It wasn't just one fire, it was dozens, scattered, unpredictable. The news said it was the worst wildfire season in over 20 years. I didn't need the news to tell me that. I could feel it in my lungs. By late afternoon, the sky was the color of rust. Birds were flying low. Even the bugs had gone quiet. I remember sitting in the kitchen, waiting for the phone to ring again, when I heard something outside. Not footsteps, exactly, softer than that. Like padded feet on gravel. I got up and pulled the curtain back. There she was, a full-grown mountain lion, standing not 5 feet from my front steps. And behind her, 3 cubs, tiny, wide-eyed, sticking close to her side like they were glued there. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I've seen mountain lions before, usually from a distance, but never like this. Never one looking straight at me through a pane of glass with that mix of wildness and something else. Desperation, maybe? Her fur was singed on one side. One of the cubs had a limp. They looked exhausted, confused, like they'd been running for hours. There were burn marks on the cub's paws, not bleeding, but raw. My heart broke before I could even think. I should have been terrified, but all I felt was stillness. That night, I didn't sleep. I left some raw chicken outside. Not much, just what I had thought. In the morning, it was gone, and there were paw prints around the porch. Big ones, little ones. She didn't leave. I'd see her at the edge of the woods, eyes reflecting the light like 2 small moons. Sometimes the cubs would tumble around in the grass behind her, always under her watchful gaze. They never came too close, but they didn't run either. I watched from the living room window for hours at a time, barely blinking. The way she moved, protective, cautious. It reminded me of the way my sister used to hover around her twins when they were little. You didn't need words to see love. It was in every step that mother took. By the 3rd day, I was putting out a bowl of water. The day after that, I left more meat, a few cuts from the back of the freezer. Things I didn't think I'd miss. I figured if they were still here, they had nowhere else to go. I called the local wildlife office, told them what I was seeing. The guy on the line, Wade, was quiet for a while, then said he'd send someone out to check in a few days. They were swamped with calls about displaced animals. I started keeping notes. When she appeared, how the cubs behaved. One of them, the smallest, was curious, always straying a few feet ahead before the mother called it back with a low growl. Another one, the limping one, mostly lay down. He didn't move much. The 3rd one stayed glued to her shadow, never straying, never blinking. It felt like I was part of something sacred, something ancient, a treaty between 2 worlds. On the 5th day, they were gone. I thought maybe they'd moved on, found safer ground. But around noon, I heard distant gunshots, sharp cracks echoing through the trees. My stomach dropped. I ran to the edge of my property and listened. Something told me to check. I grabbed my boots, my keys, and a flashlight just in case. About a mile from the house, I found tracks. Scuffed earth. A smear of blood. My pulse was in my ears. And then I saw her. The mother. She was crouched over the limping cub. He was bleeding from the flank. Not a lot, but enough to paint the grass. She looked up at me when I stepped closer, but didn't move. I crouched, hands out. Soft voice. The same way I used to talk to my dog when he'd gotten into something. She didn't flinch. The cub whimpered once, barely audible. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But I took off my flannel, wrapped the cub as gently as I could, and backed away slowly. She followed, never closer than 10 feet, but always in sight. She let me take him. I'll never forget that. I got him into the truck. She stood at the edge of the driveway, watching. I drove to the vet, about 20 minutes out in town. Told them I'd found the cub near the burn line. They didn't ask too many questions. The little guy made it. Had a torn muscle and a deep cut, but no organ damage. Needed rest, stitches, antibiotics. The vet, Dr. Kent, kept him overnight. Said he'd call fish and wildlife in the morning. When I got back home, I left some chicken out again. And water. I checked the back of the property every hour. In the morning, it was gone. 3 days later, I picked up the cub. Dr. Kent told me it would be better if the reunion happened near the house, where the mother felt safer. I brought him home in a crate, heart pounding like a drumline. I set the crate on the porch and backed away. Left the door cracked. Waited. It took hours. But just as the sun dipped below the trees, she appeared. No sound, just movement, a shadow with eyes. She came onto the porch slowly, sniffed the air. The cub let out the smallest yowl. She stopped, then patted closer, touched the crate with her nose. I don't know what passed between them, but when I opened the door, he limped out and pressed his head against her chest. She stayed a moment longer, looked at me, then they were gone. Weeks passed. The fires were mostly under control. My land was spared, but the hills around me were black and hollow. I got a few calls from Wade, checking in. Said they tracked a female cougar with 3 cubs heading east, back toward the deeper parts of the forest. They didn't come back. Not really. But one morning, about a month later, I found a rabbit leg on my porch. Not fresh, not old. Placed there. Deliberately. A thank you, maybe. I stood there, holding my coffee, looking out into the trees. The sun was just rising, painting the ash-covered branches gold. And I thought about how little separates us when everything else burns away. Not fear. Not instinct. Not even language. Just trust.